All right. Hi, ladies. So here is finishing up chapter 11 for our flip lecture, talking about marketing, and then moving on to chapter 12 as well. Okay, so for chapter 11, if you were in section 3 of class, you already finished up some of these slides. If you were in section 4, you didn't see some of these yet. So I'm going to review these, and then if you were in section 3, you can just fast forward until the point where we stopped. Okay, so market research methods. The last slide we were talking about is loyalty cards and who does the internet think you are. Market research is gathering, recording, and analyzing data about the types of goods and services people want. Market research methods. So there's several different methods to gather that information. One way is a market survey. Market surveys can take several possible forms. As you can see, a market survey is information gathered by researchers about the possible users of a product based on such characteristics as age, gender, income, education, and geographic location. It can take the form of a questionnaire, focus groups, or test marketing, offering a product for sale in a small area for a limited period of time before offering it nationally. For those of you that listen to the podcast about Jack in the Box from This American Life, you heard about how those products, how the different burgers go through that market research phase and how they become actual burgers on the Jack in the Box menu. Some of you also got a chance to peek at this website. YouGov, I think I mentioned to you guys, one of my friends works for YouGov, which is a market research company. And as you can see, YouGov is a global market research and data company built on a simple idea. The more people participate in the decisions made by the institutions that serve them, the better those decisions will be. So it's interesting because they do things like track movies. They talk about if the new Lincoln ads featuring Matthew McConaughey are producing results. They talk about millennials are not taking to aspartame-free Diet Pepsi yet. All-day breakfast includes McDonald's brand metrics, things like that. So there's this whole industry dedicated to market research, which is really, really interesting. And they do things like all of these different polls, which you'll see, some of which have to do with politics, which we will be covering a little bit more next semester. So I thought this was interesting. You can explore this website if you're interested. In the meantime, we'll go back to this. Okay, so there are the 4 P's of marketing: product, price, place, and promotion. Product, how will consumers recognize the product? Price, what price will be charged for the product? Place, where will the product be sold? And promotion, how will consumers learn about the product? So think about how will consumers recognize the product? What product is, how to package it, what kind of product identification to use, what kind of additional services like warranties are going to be attached to the product, what type of packaging. We talked about Apple packaging as being very, very distinctive. You know, it comes in that fancy, nice white box, right? If you get a computer, an iPad, an iPhone, they all come in a white box with that clean silver logo. Think about Tiffany's boxes. That color down here, that Tiffany's color is very, very distinctive. And in terms of jingles, you might recognize this.
I'm Tom Shane, and as a direct diamond importer, I've spent decades developing close personal relationships with the diamond cutters in Tel Aviv, Antwerp, and Mumbai. Being old friends certainly helps when it's time to negotiate diamond prices, but it's the way Shane Company does business that gets us the lowest. We still hand select them one at a time, choosing only the best cut stones.
Right, so while that's not necessarily a jingle, his voice is so distinctive that anytime that comes on the radio, you know about the Shane Company. And when it comes time for somebody to think about buying a diamond or some piece of jewelry, that jingle or his voice might pop into your head, right? The Walnut Creek, Cupertino, right? You guys might remember those. So that's an example of a jingle. Another one people always bring up is Sleep Train. Sleep Train, a ticket to a better night's sleep, right? That was terrible and off tune, but you get the picture, right? So those are really common examples of jingles or songs or logos and colors that really are identifiable. So consumers really recognize the product consistently. Okay, price is the next thing. What price is going to be charged for the product? One way that companies decide how to price a product is they actually tend to price it really low at the beginning to attract customers away from an established product, and then they raise prices. Some of you might be familiar with Breaking Bad.
We're set. Boys are ready. Give me some mad cheddar, yo. Cheddar, Mr. White. Fat stacks, dead presidents. Cash money. Gotta own this city.
We're not charging enough.
What?
Corner the market, then raise the price. Simple economics.
Right? So not that I'm telling you all to sell that same product, but you get the idea, right? That it's basic economics to corner the market and then raise the price. Coupons attached to products are another way that people try to convince consumers to buy their product at that price. Also, there's something called price leadership. The largest firm publishes its prices, and then the other companies match that price. This was something I thought was really interesting and fascinating. This is a Wharton Business School professor talking about pricing and the different ways that different prices appeal to different consumers using the law of 100. So I apologize, we'll have to listen to a brief commercial here. I'll skip it.
There are moments when
retailers have a special way of getting us into their stores and to buy their products. We're here with marketing professor Jonah Berger to talk about the psychology behind deals. Jonah, how do retailers get us into their stores and find their products?
So I think one thing that definitely is exciting is when there seems like a really good deal, right? When something seems like an amazing deal, you have to just rush and get it. I think Groupon has done an amazing job with this, right? If you've ever found yourself, 30 miles away from your house eating a type of food you don't even like because it was 75% off, right? That's what Groupon has done to us. It's made us think, oh, this is such a good deal, I just have to get it, even if it's not something I'm necessarily going to use. But one thing we talk about in the book is what I'll call the rule of 100. Basically how to frame a deal to make it more enticing. So imagine, for example, there's a t-shirt, $20 shirt. You could even represent it as 25% off or $5 off. Same thing, you pay $15 at the end. But that deal seems better when it's 25% off than if it's $5 off. Seems like a better deal. But it's not always the case. So if you take a $2,000 laptop, 25% off that would be $500. There, the $500 off seems better than the 25% off. So even though it's the same deal, how we represent that deal, whether it's a percentage off or an amount of money off, can make it loom larger in the consumer's mind and make it seem more enticing.
And how do high-end brands create demand around their products and create this air of exclusivity?
So I think you've seen a lot of brands do that. So, Gilt Group has done a great job online of doing that. Rue La La has as well, right? You have to log in at a certain time or all the deals are gone if you don't get there. It's sort of a velvet rope strategy that we've actually seen lots of retailers apply. Google did a great job, even though they're not a retailer, when they came out with Gmail. So, at the beginning, if you wanted one of those Gmail addresses, you had to know someone who worked there to be able to get access to it. And even though it was just an email address, it doesn't seem something really that exclusive or that exciting. Because it was hard to get, because it made people feel like an insider, they really wanted to get one.
What do brands like Apple and Starbucks do to create these cult followings?
So I think Apple and Starbucks are great examples of identity brands, right? They're not just a functional product that we just use. We don't just use our iPhone to do things. It says something about us, right? It used to be, particularly when Apple wasn't as popular, having a Mac rather than a PC was a badge of honor, right? You were showing, look, I'm part of this movement. This is part of my identity. I'm not going to be the rest of the crowd. I think it's been harder for Apple now that it is so ubiquitous, right? How do you keep that underdog status, that sort of small subgroup brand when everyone's using it? And so I think they've done some things to do that well, for example, like different colors of their product or other examples to make it seem more exclusive, but it's hard to be both a mass brand and a sort of a subculture brand.
Great, thanks so much.
No problem.
All right, so I thought that was a really fascinating look. Thank you, Business Insider, for talking about that, the psychology behind deals. I know I personally have fallen victim to that, and I bet you guys have too. So it's interesting to think about the fact that there are whole industries dedicated to kind of playing your psychology a little bit around deals. All right, place. Where will the product be sold? So this is referring not only to physically where you buy it, as in online, by phone, in a department store, specialty shop, supermarket, door-to-door, etc. It's also talking about practicing shelf awareness. Shelf awareness, pun intended. It's location within the store and on shelves. So I thought this was an interesting clip talking about placement within each of these different stores. Let's see if I can get it to load. Maybe not. All right, here you go.
Somerset's an interesting center because it's really a shopping destination as much as it is a mall. The circulation of the mall really is about people coming here and thinking about spending half of a day. So how do you keep them here? You feed them, you entertain them. You have a great variety of stores. You have places they can rest and take a break. So it's really almost like organizing a district rather than just thinking about a traditional shopping mall. You saw that we walked into the store from the outside, and there's a strategy called third window. It's got to kind of catch your eye a little bit because in most cases you're walking this way, but the store is talking to you this way. So if you see how the displays are oriented, the sort of really simple messages that are in the window, that's really intended to get your attention. When I come into the space, this store is set up with what's called a pinball plan. So you see how the fixtures are all tipped and turned. So what happens is I create a series of shopping eddies, and if I flow through, I'm kind of drawn in to these eddies that actually becomes my own little shopping store. And typically these elements are merchandised in such a way that they're complementary choices. And here, this pinball plan is about a term called stickiness, because one of the challenges in any retail, typically the front third of the space is most productive, the next third is somewhat productive, the back is least productive. So part of what you're trying to do with navigation, if you make it too simple, then people basically just touch and bounce and leave. And then last, of course, is the cash wrap with the impulse. A lot of product is presented to you literally at the point of sale. And part of this is because, consumers are coming to stores less frequently than they used to. And part of that is because they're online shopping and just because of our lives. And so a lot of these add-on impulse items here is becoming more and more important.
All right, so there you have it. I thought that was particularly interesting in the ways that the pinball design and thinking about the fact that every single store has been designed with the consumer in mind, that people are thinking about how can we get people to buy the most. I fall victim to impulse buying all the time. Do I really need another pack of gum? Probably not. Or as you guys know, I'm a chocoholic, and so they tend to put chocolate near the register, which is my downfall. But all that impulse buying near the checkout, Sephora, right? Sephora, they have those travel size things by the checkout. I am a sucker for those. I have a cajillion little things of hand lotion, which I don't really need. I could have bought the big one, and it would have probably saved me money. So I thought that was interesting. Also, another factor in terms of place, you need to think about geographic considerations. Are you really going to sell couture in a rural country town? Probably not, right? It needs to be practical. All right, thinking about promotion. How will consumers learn about the product? The use of advertising to inform consumers that a new or improved product or service is available and persuading them to purchase it. The type of advertising is going to depend on 3 different factors. First, what is the product? Second, the type of the consumer that the company wants to attract, right? They're not going to target grandmas with Taylor Swift, right? 3, the amount of money the company plans to spend. So thinking about advertising methods, there's newspapers, magazines, radio, television, banner ads, direct mail, product placement, and celebrity endorsements. Again, don't forget that your homework is to bring in an ad that speaks specifically to you. We're going to do a little bit of analysis, but I wanted to show you 2 different things. One is a brief video called Merchants of Cool. I will post the hyperlink to this. It's a long-ish documentary. It's about 50 minutes, but I'd love for you guys to watch as much of it as you can. I think it's fascinating. I watched it when I think it's a little dated, so I watched it when I was in high school and was blown away by some of the research methods that go into targeting teenagers specifically. Again, it's a little dated, so some of their examples are a little older, but I think you'll find it fascinating. I'll post this link in Schoology under the resources tab in Unit 4, so keep an eye out for that. Please pause the podcast now, or the flipped lecture now, and spend a few minutes watching that, and then come back to it whenever you're ready. All right, and coming back to, there's one other thing. This is a commercial that actually my little brother was in, which I wanted to show you guys, and you can think about soda. Who is Sprite targeting with this ad? So I'm going to pause here very quickly, look at the ad that just popped up, going with Sprite, Wingstop. It's intentional, based on the audience. My brother's the guy with the beard, number 9.
You feel it. You feel it.
All right, so I thought that was interesting, not only because my brother was in it, but also look at Wingstop, right? Wingstop popped up as a commercial. Color scheme-wise, it goes similar with this color of Sprite, but you also might think about their kind of complementary goods, right? In terms of the crispy tenders and also the Sprite, right? Having a soda. So, all right, so if you keep moving forward, if you think we're going to do an application, so normally we would have done this in class, but pick a product to apply these to. So take whatever advertisement you got and apply the 4 Ps to that product and sell the product to the class. So we might still do this with your advertisement, so just so you know where we're going with that, we'll do that in class on Tuesday. All right, for product life cycle, there is an introduction of the product, then the product has product growth, then there's maturity, right, which you know is kind of like the coming of age of the product, but then there's the decline as well. What's a product that was cool but hits its maturity and is now in decline? Think about a product if you can. I don't know, are Ugg boots still cool? That might be an example that would work. So Ugg boots were all the rage for a while. Then they kind of had their growth period. Then they kind of hit maturity, and then they hit the decline. But what's interesting about Uggs is that they're also a seasonal good. So they come into season, right, when it gets cold, which is not right now, and then they go out of fashion every summer. So that's interesting. I wonder if that, I'm sure that is like a sub-product life cycle within the bigger product life cycle. So it's interesting. All right, thinking about distribution channels, goods are usually moved from producers to consumers through middlemen, such as wholesalers, who buy large quantities of a good from producers for resale to other businesses and retailers. So you have manufacturers, which move to the wholesaler, then to the retailer, and then the consumer, which would be a mom and pop shop, right? So, and then you have the manufacturer moving to a retailer, moving to consumer. And then you have manufacturer straight to consumer, which would be an example of that would be a farmer's market, right? The manufacturer, the person who grows the goods, is the farmer, and they're directly selling it to the consumer. Whereas at a supermarket, the farmer sells the goods to a retailer, the supermarket, and then the retailer sells the goods to consumers, right? And then you have the kind of top one, manufacturers. So say the good is a mom and pop grocery store. So you have the farmers sell to a wholesaler. The wholesaler sells to the retailer, which would be the mom and pop shop, and then the retailer sells to the consumer. All right, so storage of goods. Third one down here. Storage of goods for future sales. There's always usually an inventory of about a 2 to 3 month supply that's not always stored on site, but often if they're buying it through a bigger wholesaler, the wholesaler will have the 2 to 3 month supply, and then the retailer will buy directly from the wholesaler. Okay. Thinking about transportation methods, those are going to depend based on the size and weight of the good, the cost of transportation, and the speed of getting it where it needs to go. So thinking about how would you transport liquid molasses, for example, probably not in an airplane, right? That tends to be by train. How would you transport oil from the Middle East? Right, you have geographic considerations, you have to think about the size and weight of the good, the cost of the transportation, etc. And then thinking about how would you transport computer parts from China, for example. And interestingly, there's so many other factors that come into this. You have to think about weather, you have to think about political situations within countries, you have to think about taxes and tariffs. So there's a whole bunch of factors that go into transporting goods. Other distribution channels could also include the internet, right? Thinking about the fact that with the advent of the internet, anyone with a credit card and a mailing address can access a good through delivery through the internet. Or you could think of the good or service as something like Netflix. Anyone with a credit card could access Netflix now, whereas before you had to physically go to a movie or rent a movie. Direct marketing is done mainly through catalogs and over the internet, right? So if you think about the catalogs that you get and you order something through a catalog, old school example is the Sears catalog. People used to get that mailed to their house, and then that's how you would order big things. So it's kind of an exciting thing. Ooh, this Sears catalog is here, and you'd order that through the internet, or over the phone actually back then. And then you also have club warehouse stores, which we've talked about in another unit. That's where you can buy a limited number of brands in bulk to sell at low prices, which they do. All right, so that ends chapter 11 for us. I'm going to do a separate flip lecture for chapter 12, talking about the American labor force. See you in a sec.